Hello and welcome. Tonight, a day after suspending the N-Power and other schemes under the National Social Investment Program's agency in SIPA, the President sets up special panel to audit its financial framework and policy guidelines.
those who contributed in realizing yesterday's victory for democracy, which the Supreme Court amply articulated through its ruling. Our judiciary must indeed be morally and institutionally strengthened to ensure the historic dignity and independence and its ability to serve, not the desire of the elite, but the yearning and aspirations of the greater number of Nigerians. We want to assure all Nigerians, and particularly the people of Kano State, that we will not take this show of solidarity for granted. Our Governor, Engineer Abba Kabir Isuf, will continue with the good-oriented programs which he embarked upon since he took over the reins of the government in Kano State.
Well, away from politics now, 2023 for the sports sector ended with mixed feelings as the country's athletes were engaged in various sporting engagements. Well, in 2024, Nigeria hopes to break new grounds, not only at the Olympics, but other sporting events, which include the African Cup of Nations, which is underway in Côte d'Ivoire, and the African Games. We'll continue our series looking at the task ahead of the government in 2024 with a focus on the sports sector tonight.
From Cross River State is Minister-designate Senator John Owaneno, who was born on the 4th day of June in 1966.
President Bola Tinubu on August the 16th, 2023, appointed Senator John Eno as the 36th Minister of Sports Development, setting the tone for development in sports under his administration. Shortly after assuming office, the minister undertook an inspection of the facilities at the Moshood Abiola National Stadium, Abuja. He followed that with a tour of the dilapidated National Stadium in Surulere, Lagos, to assess the level of decay at the once glamorous edifice.
Our sports needs a serious re-engineering. Before now, our sports, we were ranked the 5th best in the world. But what position are we? In football, in athletics, in boxing, we're down there. So my advice to the Honorable Minister, this is what I expect of him. Thank God he has come to speak his mind. Thank God he's ready to listen. But he should bring to himself those people who are genuinely committed to the development of sports around him.
Aside sports administration, there were key sporting moments in 2023. The Super Falcons of Nigeria bowed out of the FIFA Women's World Cup, co-hosted by Australia and New Zealand in the round of 16. The national under-20 team, the Flying Eagles, bowed out of the FIFA Under-20 Men's World Cup in Argentina in the quarterfinals. Toby Amushon came short in her quest to retain the 100-meter hurdles title at the World Athletics Championships in Budapest, Hungary, finishing 6th in the final. The D-Tigress affirmed their dominance in Africa after they won the FIBA Women's Afrobasket crown for a 4th consecutive time. Nigeria became the biggest winners in the CAF Awards, winning the Men and Women Player of the Year awards, the Goalkeeper of the Year, and Women Team of the Year. And 2024 appears set to get even more engaging for the nation on the international scene as it presents a unique task for sports in Nigeria, with the Africa Cup of Nations in Côte d'Ivoire this month, the African Games in Ghana in March, the Olympic Games in Paris come July, and the Women's Africa Cup of Nations holding in Morocco, among others, all lined up.
Even the Bible says that if the foundation is destroyed, what can the righteous do? In many of our sports federations, in many of our sports institutions, we don't have foundational structures. We just do things haphazardly. That's why today you record one success and then 10 years down the line, you can't even build on that success because the foundation is not in place. So in that regard, Nigerian sports industry policy, it's in place now. The next step is how are we going to ensure that we begin to implement what that policy says.
We have new people at the ends of our affairs, and we have a president
that is asking for scorecards. Presidents that want to know what you're doing. So I expect that our minister will do better than those that we've had before. And 2023 had been a very slow year for sports. 2024 should be a year where everything will bloom. It's a year of many international competitions, and I'm sure Nigeria will not be found wanting.
The first big test for Nigeria in 2024 is Africa's biggest football competition, the AFCON, where three-time African champions, the Super Eagles, aim to end a 10-year wait for the African title. Will this dream become a reality? More on the country's sports outlook for this year. We are now being joined by sports management consultant, Mr. Yomi Kuku, right here in our Lagos studio. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10.
Happy New Year.
Absolutely. Happy New
It's
Year.
been a whole year.
It has been. We had this conversation last year.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, I'm tempted to ask, has anything changed? But 2024 obviously will be a very busy year for Nigeria sports-wise, starting from tomorrow with the AFCON, which is already underway with the opening match right now. But let's talk about the administration of sports. What should government administrators, those who have a say in that sector, what must they do differently this year to avoid disappointment?
Well, I think everybody seems to be getting used to all this disappointment here and there. But one thing you can't take away from the fact that for sports administration, we're making some remarkable progress. And what I mean by that is that there's some form of stability in that sector. You'll recall that President Muhammadu Buhari, the former president, had like 2 ministers for 2 cycles, election cycles. And, you know, from Mr. Dalong to Mr. Sondedari. Yeah. So hopefully if we can continue to have that, that is one improvement we have come to understand. Now, the other thing that we now need to do is to focus on the basics, which is the fundamental of picking the different sectors in the management of sports in Nigeria and then extending it to athlete performance and getting them the desired result and giving some of these administrators deliverables. But then again, we have also a new administration. So hopefully, President Bola Tinubu will retain the current sports minister for the next 4 years. And then I'm also hoping that the people around him will also guide him very right. Because there seems to be a cycle of vengeance and revenge on the part of people that surround the Honorable Sports Minister's office. We experienced that in 2015. We had that in 2019. And you will recall that despite the fact that towards the end of the tenure of Mr. Sondedari, where he was able to focus on directing a sports policy for Nigeria that would have helped this current incoming, the current one that we have no longer incoming, you know. But I'm not sure whether that has really passed on within the fraternity of the Federal Sports Development Ministry itself. Right. So, but if we're able to get that on, that is one step forward. It doesn't mean that everything should be taken hook, line, and sinker. You know, they may have to do some reviews and bring in some other experts who can actually work on it.
Let's talk about sports infrastructure. I know there's a lot to talk about, but we need to touch on infrastructure, which remains a major challenge. If we would do anything differently this year, what will that be for you regarding infrastructure?
Well, I think the bottom line is first to revive the National Stadium in Lagos. It's basically turned into a den of rodents and all that.
Is this for like the 1 millionth time, literally speaking?
Well, we said at that time that was a wrong decision by the former sports minister, and people felt that we're just being antagonistic. You know, you needed to have a plan before you go on certain things. And if you ask me, we already have quite a number of football stadiums all over Nigeria. You know, everybody focusing on football. I mean, from the BVN statistics that we have now, we're talking about more than 100 million people. So the viability of 20 million people getting into sports, either as elite or recreational, it's really very high. Job creation and all that. Thankfully, if you look at what the current administration is doing in job creation, especially in the creative industry, which should include sports, you know, that is an opportunity for us to be able to build on the infrastructure you're talking about. So the National Stadium should be the first target. They could convert the National Stadium into simply an athletics, performance center without having to get in the football. Convert the pitch itself into field events, and then the tracks, revive them, and, reduce the stands as well. You can reduce and pull some
sides of the spectator stands down and then make it available for other purposes itself.
Right.
There is the indoor sports hall and many other things, around infrastructure. So,
and naturally, this ties to the conversation around funding. I mean, we could talk about infrastructure for as long as possible, but funding is at the heart of it. So let me see if I can tie this to our final question.
Okay.
What would you say should be the major focus for government this year? If we could just wind it down in less than a minute. Maybe funding will play a major role, but what should be that major focus?
Well, I think there's funding now. You're saving a lot from the fuel subsidy. So extend it to
sports is eyeing that as well.
Yes, exactly, because you want to work with a very strong restive youth problem. True. And then you need to attract sports into that. Nigerians, young people, they have that physical attributes, so convert that into it. And then focus a lot. I think this current sports minister should please, in his wisdom, do a very intense research on reviving the National Institute for Sports. That is the bedrock. When you miss that, believe me, there is nowhere we're going. The best times of Nigerian sports was through the NIS.
True.
So they need to revive that part.
Okay.
And then outside of the infrastructure you mentioned. And then the sports minister's office should compose of a very strong, small working group.
Right.
And then reduce the number of sports we are participating for now, for developmental purposes, and then achieving results in the next 4 years.
Quickly, your prediction for AFCON Super Eagles.
AFCON. Let's go there and enjoy the game.
Mr. Yomi Kuku, sports management consultant, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for the once in a year, meeting.
Okay,
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we'll go on a break now, and when we return, Nigeria's stock market closes up 4.24% in the second trading week of 2024. Well, that's some business news. So join us again. Well, to security matters now, issues of trans-border crimes such as terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, human trafficking and smuggling, among several others, have heightened concerns over insecurity along the Nigeria-Cameroon border. Well, the absence of clear demarcations also continues to pose risks and challenges, especially in areas lacking adequate security infrastructure. Well, this development prompted a meeting of local authorities along the international border in Adamawa State, aimed at ensuring that these security challenges are sorted and workable solutions are proffered.
Adamawa State is one of the frontline states that borders Cameroon, with 9 local government areas hosting a part of the 900 kilometers borderline. This meeting of local authorities along the international border is attended by representatives of communities along the border across the frontline states, including Adamawa, Borno, Taraba, Benue, Cross River, and Akwa Ibom states. The Deputy Governor of Adamawa State, Professor Kaletapwa Farauta, is the chairperson of the Nigeria-Cameroon Border States Committee, and she highlights the importance of collaboration between the federal and state governments.
Nigeria and Cameroon share a long history of socio-economic ties and cultural relationships that predates the arrival of colonial administration. Communities living along these borders are largely homogeneous. In that regard, our efforts here will hopefully not only foster peaceful coexistence, but also open doors for more opportunities for progress and development.
The meeting is holding amid insecurity in Nigeria's northeastern region and the increase in trans-border crime.
The Nigeria Immigration Service is tasked with the responsibility of protecting the expansive borderline as well as the territorial integrity of the nation. This will go a long way in checkmating cross-border crimes such as smuggling of migrants, trafficking of persons, banditry, kidnapping, etc., etc.
It is important to stress here that our collective desire for Nigeria's security and economic prosperity, as well as the well-being of our people, cannot be overemphasized.
One issue that has also bedeviled the region is the absence of clear-cut boundary demarcations, and Governor Umaru Fintiri wants that to be addressed.
I stand before you today to reaffirm the state government's unequivocal readiness to support all plans and initiatives aimed at addressing the protracted border challenges in our various states. Commonly known to you, such challenges have resulted to unaccountable communal clashes, several acts of economic sabotage, and a number of cross-border security disturbances.
The one-day workshop with the theme, Transforming Borders from Barriers of Separation to Bridges of Cooperation and Integration, is expected to bring out findings that will enhance security and welfare of border communities.
Well, kidnapping appears to be on the rise in Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, and its environs, as no fewer than 33 people have been reportedly abducted in less than 1 month. Now, while some of these kidnap incidents happened a few kilometers from the Abuja city center, the majority of the burden of insecurity is borne by residents in Abuja suburbs. Our next report is a special piece on how Abuja rural dwellers are faring in the face of what's been described as a deteriorating security situation.
Rising insecurity in communities around the Federal Capital Territory have headlined the news in recent times as residents continue to report incidences of abductions. We travel to some of these communities that have been affected in the Buhari axis of the Abuja-Kaduna Highway, as well as the Gwagwaladada area, where residents have been under the siege of kidnappers. Between December 2023 and January 2024, at least 33 people have been reportedly kidnapped from Zuma, Dutse, Kuduru, and Mape villages, all in the Federal Capital Territory. On Sunday, January 7, kidnappers invaded this estate in Dutse in the Buhari Area Council. 9 people were abducted, including a mother and her 4 children, who were residents in this house, which is now deserted.
To be sincere, police was here about 20 minutes or 25 minutes when those guys left with those 10 people, 7 children and 3 adults.
Between October and December 2023, there were at least 13 recorded kidnapping involving 80 victims in Gbao, Kuje, Pegi, Abaji, Keti, and Kwali. The growing insecurity made some residents protest along the Buhari-Kaduna Expressway last week. Some of these communities now rely on the services of local vigilante to secure their roads and villages.
The challenges that was moving around this road, we have some kidnappers disturbing people, killing back people and seize their bike. They will just destroy people anyhow. Entirely, all this Gogolada session, that is what they have been doing.
When there was this issue of insecurity, we wrote letter to DSS, to so many people, but they had nothing to say about. So we need to do it ourselves, because it is our life. And we have this thing in mind. We say, okay, let's come up, have some vigilante group, or group of youth who will volunteer, use their own strength and their own life, their own blood to come here. It's a volunteer work. Nobody is paying there.
Several efforts to speak with the FCT Police Commissioner on how the police is handling security in rural communities were unsuccessful. However, we spoke with the Secretary of the FCT Command and Control Center, who coordinates security in the Federal Capital Territory.
Vigilantes and hunters have been able to complement the efforts of the state actors, which are the law enforcement agencies. And like in the FCT, there is no vigilante group that exists without the knowledge of the divisional police officer, that's the DPO. And that is why you see that a lot of success stories have been recorded.
Abuja, a one-time safe city, is gradually experiencing worsening security, a development that residents say the authorities must face headlong and address the challenge.
Away from security matters, the Gombe state capital may be set for major transformation in the coming years following Governor Inuwayaya's reception of the report on the review of the city master plan and development of the state's grazing reserves. While the Grazing Reserves and Cattle Routes Committee proffers solutions to the farmer herded crisis, banditry and associated criminal activities, the Committee on Gombe City Master Plan presented 3 prototypes for the expansion of the city.
Governor Inuwayaya is moving to restore orderliness in land usage and town planning in Gombe by reclaiming grazing reserves, cattle roads, game reserves and others encroached over the course of several years, and in the same breath implement a reviewed master plan for the growth and expansion of Gombe City. This is a reviewed 10-year master plan for Gombe City, running from 2023 to 2033. The aim is to correct the chaotic growth of shanties and unplanned development within the capital city. 3 prototypes were presented by the committee in view of the growing population of the city.
Of this intercity satellite towns, for 875,000 population.
The Committee on Grazing Reserves and Cattle Routes recommended steps that should be taken to address the conflict between farmers and herders.
The committee, in consideration of the need to have a clear picture of the herdsmen farmers conflict in the state, sought for and received documented incidents of clashes in the state from the Ministry of Internal Security and Ethical Rotation and all heads of security agencies.
The governor is optimistic of implementing the recommendations of the committees while noting the impact of non-compliance to land use regulations.
We have no alternative. There is no way. It's either we allow this planless life to come and engulf all of us, or we change and go for a better planned life that will provide the space for each and every one of us, and indeed the generations that are yet unborn, to come and enjoy the life that will be good for them.
After the presentation, the chairman of the Gombe City Master Plan Committee gives insight into the committee's work.
We did not only find out those problems, but we made proposals in our designs for how those places will be opened up and developed. And if the state, as we had His Excellency the Governor say, well, they are going to implement it, then we will be much, much better. And then, of course, subsequent development beyond the target year of our plan can now be more easily built.
The state is committing to intentional planned developments to build a future Gombe state that will be the preferred destination for investors.
Residents of the southeast and south-south who have longed for the return of rail operations on the Port Harcourt-Aba line may no longer have to wait for too long. This is because the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Railway Corporation, Mr. Fidet Okiria, has given the assurance that the rail line is scheduled to commence operations in the coming months after the completion of works on the tracks. He stated this in the state capital during an inspection tour of the rail facilities.
The project is not yet completed. The project is Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. Okay. They are working in phases. What they have done is that what we call the main line, they have laid the track up to Aba, and we are so anxious to commence operation. That's why the minister directed us in railway to come and look so that we can plan ahead of the operations. So we took inspection from Port Harcourt to Aba. We have confirmed that the main track has reached Aba. They are what we call siding, loop line, workshop line. Is what they are doing now. And the ministry and the NRC is putting them under pressure to deliver those so that the operation can start. So as we speak now, you can put a wagon or a locomotive on the track from Port Harcourt to Aba, but that will not be good enough for commercial operation yet.
The business news now. Foreign airlines operating in Nigeria are threatening to go on strike unless the government grants permission for them to repatriate their earnings, which are currently trapped in the country. The Association of Foreign Airlines and Representatives in Nigeria, which is the overall organization for international carriers operating in the country, has knocked the government for only settling $61 million out of the $800 million total funds which they seek to repatriate. The central bank governor, Laimi Cardoso, had assured foreign airlines that trapped funds will be released while addressing the outstanding payments for diverse international or industries and market segments. According to experts, the substantial unfulfilled demand is deterring foreign exchange inflows and contributing to the strain on the naira, which has witnessed a depreciation exceeding 50% of its value since last year. To the domestic stock market, which ended the second trading week of 2024 in January positive, recording just one dip in 5 trading sessions as the bullish trend from 2023 continues in the new year. The impact of bargain hunting for blue chips such as MTN Nigeria and the banking sector and consumer goods components drove the all-share index to a new historical high of more than 83,000 points and the market cap at over 43 trillion naira. Performance on the sectoral index table was also positive, particularly from the insurance and banking counter, which gained 7.63 and 5.10% accordingly. Cadbury was top out the gainers counter with a 42% gain on its share price. Dark Communications led the losers counter with 30.23% loss, while the trio of Fidelity Bank, FCMB, and Transcorp were the top trades for the week. Well, after months of negotiation, the Ghanaian government has secured a deal with the Official Creditors Committee to restructure $5.4 billion of bilateral loans. The country's government and its official creditors are expected to formalize terms in a memorandum of understanding with subsequent implementation through bilateral accords. Ghanaian Finance Minister mentioned that the deal should trigger $1.25 billion in immediate financing for the economy, including a second $600 million disbursement from the IMF as part of its $3 billion bailout program to Ghana. The IMF currently has a $3 billion bailout program for the country, which is aimed at improving the country's macroeconomic stability and aiding Ghana's debt sustainability. Early this week, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission approved 12 Bitcoin spot ETF applications in what has been described as a watershed moment for the global cryptocurrency industry. On the first day of U.S. trading, the listed Bitcoin exchange traded funds saw $4.6 billion worth of shares trade hands as of Thursday afternoon, according to LESG data. 11 spot Bitcoin ETFs, including BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, and ARC21 Shares Bitcoin ETF, among others, began trading Thursday morning, kicking off a fierce competition for market share. Our sports news is next on the news at 10 with Victoria Longjohn in our Abuja studio.
Well, thank you, Kayode. Hello and welcome to Sports News. The eagerly anticipated Africa Cup of Nations has begun with a colourful opening ceremony put together in Abidjan, the capital city of Côte d'Ivoire, by the organisers. The ceremony took place at the Alassane Ouattara Stadium, which will also play host to the opening match between host Ivory Coast and Guinea-Bissau. The organisers used the opening ceremony to display every aspect of African culture. Now, still with the African hopes, Côte d'Ivoire and West African neighbours Guinea-Bissau battle it out in the opening game of the Africa Cup of Nations. The Elephants currently lead in the game, which has seen over 75 minutes of football. Now, if things stay this way, Côte d'Ivoire will have secured their first 3 points. And Super Eagles coach Jose Peseiro believes that the Super Eagles' attacking prowess is not matched in other areas of their team as they prepare to begin their Africa Cup of Nations bid. Peseiro is confident the Super Eagles will go far in the tournament. The three-time champions opened their campaign against Equatorial Guinea in Abidjan on Sunday, with the team spearheaded by Africa Footballer of the Year Victor Osimhen. Even with a series of withdrawals, Nigeria can call on some of Africa's best attackers, including Kelechi Iheanacho, Terem Murphy, Samuel Chukwueze, Moses Simon, and Ademola Lookman. Away from Africa now, Cole Palmer's first half penalty gave Chelsea a narrow win over West London rivals Fulham at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League. Palmer's reverse pass set of Raheem Sterling, who was caught by Issa Diop inside the penalty area. Palmer dispatched a sport kick, spending Fulham keeper Bernard Leno the wrong way to net his 9th goal since joining the Blues in August. Chelsea kept Fulham at arm's length and held on for their 3rd consecutive victory to jump to 8th on the table. And Manchester City moved within 2 points of Liverpool at the top of the Premier League with victory over Newcastle in a keenly contested encounter at St James Park. Pep Guardiola's side won the thrilling encounter 3-2. Newcastle led 2-1 until the 74th minute before substitute Kevin De Bruyne equalised. Norwegian youngster Oscar Bob then scored the winning goal in the dying moments of the game. And lastly, US Open champion Coco Gauff is hoping to win at least 10 Grand Slams by the time she hangs up her racket. The 19-year-old landed her maiden slam at Flushing Meadows last year against Arina Sabalenka and begins the 2024 Australian Open as one of the favourites. The American is in Melbourne for the Australian Open after beating Elina Svitolina to defend her Auckland Classic title in preparation for the Grand Slam of the year. And that's it on Sports News. It's back to you, Kayode.
Well, thank you, Victoria. Ahead of the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, Yobe residents are commending the military for restoring relative peace to the northeast sub-region, which was previously ravaged by the Boko Haram insurgency. According to them, although there are still pockets of attacks, the northeast is gradually regaining its identity as a region of peace. Well, this next report looks at the current state of peace in Yobe State.
Yobe State is one of the epicenters of the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria's northeast, which has led to the loss of lives, displacements and destruction of property worth millions of naira.
Hip, hip, hip!
The armed forces have adopted both kinetic and non-kinetic approach in dealing with the insurgency, as well as the provision of education support for the vulnerable population. Residents of Yobe State are delighted with these efforts.
For the military, if one says the military does nothing, then the person is biased. The military are up and doing, because if not because of the military, we don't even have a time for us to have these discussions. We could have been somewhere hidden or something of that nature.
Performance of the army in Yobe State, especially in relation to the insurgency period, it was very tremendous, very commendable. Actually, they have played a very vital role in peacekeeping in Yobe State.
Though there are still pockets of attacks, some of the residents are confident that the region is on the path to the restoration of peace.
Military, sincerely speaking, had done incredibly well and are still doing very well, despite the shortcomings in the needs and the challenges they have as to the equipments. Sometimes when you discover and compare the equipments in the hands of the terrorists, they are far more sophisticated than the ones the Nigerian military have. But still, they sacrifice their lives, they sacrifice everything about themselves to safeguard the integrity of our nation.
The Nigerian Legion is preparing to celebrate the 2024 Armed Forces Remembrance Day, and the Yobe State chapter appeals to residents to support ex-servicemen.
Big problem is the housing. The government has assisted us with the health insurance. We have gotten that health insurance. It has greatly reduced the pain of the medical something.
These appreciations by the resident, as well as relevant information sharing, are expected to serve as an impetus for the military to do more to improve security across the region and the country.
Well, outside the country, Russia has begun unloading a shipment of wheat at the port of Douala in Cameroon. The wheat, totaling 25,000 tons, is part of a broader humanitarian aid initiative, which President that Russian President Vladimir Putin promised during the second Russia-Africa summit in July last year. Footage from the port shows cranes in operation unloading the wheat and transferring it to lorries. The wheat will undergo further processing in mills to produce wheat flour, which will then be directed to the neighboring Central African Republic. Cameroon serves as a crucial processing hub for wheat, as the Central African Republic lacks the necessary capabilities for such operations. Burkina Faso, Eritrea, Mali, Somalia, CR, and Zimbabwe are to be recipients of 25,000 to 50,000 tons of grain, which will be delivered free of charge. Voters in Taiwan have elected William Lai as their president in a historic election, a move that is set to further widen the gulf between the country and China. Mr. Lai is reported to have set a new record by winning an unprecedented third consecutive presidential term for his party. He had earlier described the development as an irreversible trajectory, vowing that the country will continue to walk on the right path forward and will not turn around or look backwards. Shortly after the results were announced, China issued a statement insisting that Taiwan is part of China, in an apparent rejection of the emergence of Mr. Lai as a president. While Beijing has called for peaceful reunification, it has also not ruled out the use of force. And the main news again. Well, the president today approved the establishment of a special presidential panel to audit the financial and policy guidelines of the National Social Investment Programs Agency in SIPA. Former military President General Ibrahim Babangida has thrown his weight behind the devolution of power and resources to the state, just as he ruled out further military interruption of the nation's democratic process. Representatives of communities and states on the Nigeria-Cameroon border have met in Adamawa State to discuss ways of tackling increasing trans-border crimes in the area. And voters in Taiwan have elected William Lai as their president in a historic poll, in a move set to further widen the gulf between the country and mainland China. Well, that's the news at 10 for tonight, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kaido Kikilu. Good night.